My presentation will focus on an approach to a possible Portuguese substitute production of the Asian textiles in use in the modern age. And the first part of the presentation will be an overview of the textiles in use in domestic rich interiors of selected houses. A second and core part will focus on a study about a possible new substitute textile production of the Asian textiles. And in the end, some study problematics and conclusions will be addressed. As a consequence of an itinerary way of life and according to the versatility of the spaces, the house divisions were practically bare of ornamentation and comfort. The textiles, as we all know, provided the furniture with greater magnificence and were among the most valuable items in the interiors of the 17th and 18th centuries Portuguese manor houses. As so, the different types of textiles such as tapestries, wall hangings, door covers, quilts, canopies, dressing chairs, tables or benches coverings performed a triple function: utility, aesthetic and ostentation. When the Portuguese crossed the Indian Ocean, a new material, hybrid and visual culture was born. However, despite profiting from the arrival of overseas textiles after 1498, the textiles imported from Europe by the Portuguese remained steady throughout the modern age. Inside the Portuguese rich noble houses, we could find tapestries from Harris, Tournai, or the North and Brussels. We could also find bed furnishing, as the bedroom was considered the anchor of the residence. And at this time, there was normally an intertwining between the wooden furniture that constituted the bed and the set of textiles that covered and adorned it. The Spanish carpets from different types were a common presence in the Portuguese noble interiors at this time, as well as the Ottoman carpets, and also some Persian carpets could be found in royal court, ecclesiastic and noble rich interiors, mainly in use in special occasions, being these the most expensive and the rarest type of interior textiles in the 16th century. From the 16th to the 18th century, besides European tapestries and Spanish, Ottoman and Persian carpets, the interiors of the upper levels of Portuguese society were adorned more and more with embroidered textiles from Asia, including bed covers, doors, wall hangings from India, from China, and also in a less scale, the bedspreads from India, but printed, not embroidered. Considering the high cost of the European impressive textiles and the fact that the Asian textiles were inaccessible to a vast group of consumers, even after 1489, the creation of national manufacturers were a perfect alternative. The influence of the Oriental art on Portuguese art became a real inspiration for the new artistic productions. And so, in the end of the 16th century and beginning of the 17th, embroidered textiles inspired by Asian motifs, colors and patterns were produced in Portugal. Among them were the bedspreads from Castelo Branco and the rugs from Arraiolos, as the most well-known. Second part of the presentation will focus on a research whose achievements and reflections constitute the main output of an art history master thesis regarding a Portuguese possible substitute production of these Asian textiles in use in the multicultural modern age, which has been developed at the Nova School of Social Sciences and Humanities of Lisbon, with a present and attentive mentoring and the amenability of all the involved. The study aims were identifying a group of embroidered colchas with similarities, with them to build a focus group, to highlight the main characteristics of these samples gathered, as samples in use in the interiors of the 16th and 18th century, and to isolate and justify the autonomy of a substitute textile production of the modern age within this context of the textiles with Asian influences. In order to achieve these proposed aims, we proceed to the inventorying of the existing pieces in Portugal that fit into this new morphological functional typology being analyzed, and at the same time consulted documental and biographical sources. At the end of the co-recognition process, which has taken us all over the country in order to reach museums, house museums, churches, palaces, and foundations to observe in situ the possible samples to be included in the corpus group, we were able to select among pieces in store and pieces in exhibition 20 samples out of 35 contemporary pieces observed, and finally create a representative material of study. Each of the samples has a data sheet with standardized information and a framework, as they are all located in Portugal from north to south. As they have all similar visual and material features, they used to decorate domestic and religious interiors in Portugal during the modern age. They perform different functions: bed covers, wall hangings, table covers, front of altar, and others. They belong to palaces, museums, house museums, churches for mercy, private owners, and foundations. And they may have been through different stages of evolution. We are studying it. About their material and technical analysis, we may say that all of them have two canvas, a frontal canvas and a reinforcing one, being the frontal canvas made of taffeta or silk satin, and some pieces of dyed linen. All the samples present the same stitches, embroidered stitches. The core stitch is the chain stitch used as background and as outline, and the daisy stitch or knot stitch just punctually present in most of the samples, let's say. The palette of colors is common, being more or less restricted according to the sample's tendency and option. About the composition scheme and structure, they all have the same composition scheme. It's noted. They all have this shape, and we can see a center, a small center, a larger frame, two smaller frames, and also let me. So a frame, a center, the big frame, two smaller frames, and these smaller frames have two stripes from each side, and this is the field. So they all have this structure, all of them. They also have similar central motifs. Some of them are equal, only the colors are different, and the frame-sake iconography, it's also similar in some of them. So this is the panorama of the composition and structure. About the presence of cultural miscegenation. The modern age multiculturalism can be attested by all of the samples of the corpus, as all of them incorporate both Asian motifs and influences, special Indian and Persian, observed, for instance, in the use of polychromy, combination of colors in the structure, frames and strips, in the chain stitch, and in the stylized flowers. And they also have European inspirations under the influence of the artistic currents of the time, Renaissance and Baroque, which can be observed in the use of restricted polychromy and the outstanding Alcantus enrollments, in the natural representation of flowers and fruits, and in the use of flower baskets and garlands, and which influenced also other grammars. Therefore, besides the common features that we have pointed, the samples of the corpus present iconographic and decorative specificities which bring some of them closer together and can be linked with the period of execution or with different workshops. For this reason and for a deeper analysis, we decided to divide the sample into 4 subgroups. The first subgroup has 3 samples, and in it the vegetal and floral decoration, mostly polychrome, is highlighted. The decoration comprises a composition that starts from an octagonal center and may contemplate curls of branches, tendrils in a floral harmonization placed symmetrically along the vertical and horizontal axis of the example. These are 3. This one is cut, the last one is cut in half, and it worked as frontal of altar, I don't know. But it was soon, I realized that it was an old piece. So the subgroup 2 comprises 7 colchas. It is characterized by a dominant decoration with stylized polychrome flowers, stems and leaves symmetrically arranged. The center normally shows a combination of 4 flowers, artichokes or other flowers, while in the corners of the colchas we can see loops. In the field of the colcha we can see loops or vases with flowers inside. You can see the loops here. You can see the loops here. You can see the vases here. And subgroup 3 comprises 6 samples, presents a decoration with contention of polychromy, expressive curls of acanthus, stems and leaves, which sometimes include loops in the composition as well, more simple form, with decoration normally ending in a quadripetal flower in the center. This one is just a piece. And this one I think it's cut in the middle. So this is one fold. Subgroup 4 also has a decoration with contention of polychromy, focused on curls and stems and of stems and acanthus leaves, branches in harmony with non-stylized flowers and fruits like pomegranates, figs and pine cones. The center comprises normally a basket or vase with non-stylized flowers surrounded by a garland of flowers or a frame. The first 2 we believe that they were executed, they were produced in the middle of the 17th century. These 2, so group 3 and 4, probably in the late 17th and early 18th century. Last, we will focus on some topics. We'll focus on some topics or challenges that we were confronted during the study. Beginning by the provenance, so we have a lack of information regarding the colcha's original provenance. Most of them were acquired in antique shops or auctions. Some we know that they come from collectors like Vilhena and Burnet, but no information was with the piece, so we are investigating. Some came from churches to museums, Mercy churches, I think 2 of them. One still is in a Church of Mercy. Other remain in palace property, but their origin is also unknown, so the owner do not know who belonged the colcha originally. And we found this monogram in one of them printed with ink, but we are also still trying to discover the owner of the colcha, what does not mean that's the original owner. About probably attributed dates, we believe that that this is extremely wide-ranging attribution, but we are investigating. And about origins that are attributed by the different owners of the colchas. We found 8 Indo-Portuguese, 5 Portuguese, 4 Indian, 1 Chinese, and 2 have no origin, and many of them are very similar. So we could point several discrepancies, namely as identical samples were attributed different datic or different places of origin, and we could also find one case where one sample went to exhibitions and the production center attributed was different. So it's a problematic to be studied and developed. So another problematic of this study is that we are confronted with an increased circulation of Asian textiles and raw materials between continents. So dyes, Indian cotton, Chinese silk, Portuguese linen, among others, as well as with the circulation of artisans and embroiderers, especially from India to Portugal, from the year 1498 onwards. So in view of this framework, it is highly difficult to distinguish between an embroidery sample of indigenous Indian origin from an Indian embroidered textile commissioned by Portugal, or even from a Portuguese sample with Asian influences. Though we are leaning towards a Portuguese production inspired by the vegetalist and floral textile production developed in India for the European market in the modern age, we are still at the very beginning of our study. As the information available in particular documents, inventories, palaces, records, museums, books is generally too vague, and no documents were found to support any theory, we cannot draw definitive conclusions about the date and origin of the corpus samples production centers, about original commissioners or consumers. As such, the new typology of production, as we believe to have identified, is difficult to contextualize for the time being, as more data, such as the results of the analysis of the dyes, both to the colchas filaments and to the canvas, is needed to confirm or to exclude that the chance that some of these samples might have been commissioned and produced in India for the Portuguese markets. The main centers producing Asian textiles have been studied up to the time of the Portuguese arrival in Asia in 1489. The complexity increases when it comes to studying textile production and circulation, mainly in the context of the Portuguese presence in Asia during the 16th and 18th centuries. There is already a significant number of studies on Indian embroidered productions commissioned by Portugal, special to Bengal and Gujarat centers, but also to others during the modern age. However, few studies are dedicated to Portuguese embroidered textile productions inspired by Asian productions, in this case, mostly by Indian textiles. Some of the Portuguese embroidered textiles have received Asian influences during the modern age, and they have been included under the same umbrella, the umbrella of Castelo Branco production. Only recently, in the context of the certification of this embroidery, One parallel Portuguese production was autonomized, and it was baptized as Lisbon Workshop. Other parallel silk embroidered productions have simply been categorized with no criteria as Indian, Chinese, Indo-Portuguese, Sino-Portuguese, Portuguese, or Portuguese commission to India. It is within this framework that we believe to have identified another possible substitute Portuguese production of the Asian textiles, to which we call the vegetalist and floral Portuguese-Asian colchas, that was in use in selected Portuguese interiors of the 17th and 18th century, and that has so far been unjustly ignored by the scholars. As a conclusion, I may say that considering the outputs of our research, that are still in the beginning, we are convinced that the vegetalist and floral Portuguese-Asian colchas production, whose samples were found in Portugal, tend to represent an autonomous Portuguese production, parallel to the 16th to 18th already recognized Portuguese textile productions such as Arraiolos, Castelo Branco, and Lisbon Workshop productions that still requires an in-depth and comparative study. However, though we believe to have identified a possible production inspired by the vegetal and floral textile productions developed in India for the European market in the modern age, we still can't exclude the possibility that the colchas of the corpus, one or more, were produced in India under Portuguese commission, as we need more data, as I referred, dyes analysis, for instance, to support our suspicion or tendency. At a later date, it is our intention to expand this corpus and continue to study the new autonomized production as we are convinced it represents not a domestic or leisure production, we will pursue the search for the production centers and potential associated workshops in light of the respective historical, artistic, and spatial temporal context. Thank you for your attention.